Thank you, Gaz, and welcome to people right across the world, live at the Iconic studio in Derby, England. And we're about to start hours of amazing information to put into context what the bloody hell is happening in the world all around us. And where from here, of course, is a question that so many are asking, and we'll provide some answers as we go along. Now, it's going to be in three sections. The first section that I'm going to talk about may not seem to be involved in conspiracy and manipulation, but actually it's the very foundation of it, the very bottom line of it. And there's a reason that they don't want us to know the nature of reality. It's because understanding that is what will give us a fix, a reference point for all that's happening around us in the world of the seen. So I'm going to lay that out in this first section. Then a bit of a marathon, number 2. Good to have a flask. When I'm going to look at how this world is manipulated and who by and what by. And I'm going into this COVID nonsense to show that it's an extraordinary confidence trick, an extraordinary sleight of hand, illusion, which has captivated and captured the minds of billions of people. And then in the third section, we'll really get in to answering this question, where from here? And we'll start with that. Where from here? Okay, understand why that's being asked it myself. But to understand where from here, we have to know where here is. Where from what here? Because the nature of the here, as we perceive it, is, as I say, the very foundation of the entire conspiracy, stopping us understanding that. While that which is manipulating us does understand that, and thus from that advantage, that massive advantage of knowledge, can manipulate the population while the population doesn't even know they're being manipulated because they don't know the techniques possible, because they don't understand the reality they're experiencing. So, if we don't understand reality, how can we understand anything? We can't. There's no reference point. If we believe the world to be as we're told it to be, well, that is a reference point, yes, but it's a false one. And therefore, everything that comes from that must also be false in terms of decisions that are made, things that are done. So, this is the here we perceive to be the here. It's a solid world of, much of it chaos, and I guess it's chaos when you don't understand the nature of the reality that you're experiencing, but it's a solid world where everything's apart from everything else. You sit in a traffic jam, and there's a solid vehicle in front of you, which means you can't go any further because you're in a solid vehicle, and all that perception of reality that comes from that. And there's all these big solid buildings giving us the constant perception that we live in a physical world, a solid world that has empty space between the solidity. Well, in fact, as we look at the people of many and various kinds and cultures and backgrounds and colors and creeds, they are the solid people that walk around and interact with this solid world. That's the perception, that's the way that we experience reality from cradle to grave. But that reality is only the decoded reality of the five senses, the decoded reality. Just as a computer is decoding Wi-Fi into a very different form on the screen, as we'll see, so we are doing the same through the five senses. What we hear, what we see, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch, are what gives us a fix, or we think it does, on the reality that we're experiencing. But that's only one level of reality, and not even the main one. In fact, what we call the human world is not a place as such. It's a band of frequency. A band of frequency that these bodies, what I call biological computers, the senses I'm talking about, can decode into an apparent reality. Anything outside of that band of frequency, in other words, that band that the human senses can decode, is invisible to us. And if you say to people, when you look through your eyes, can you see everything in the space that you're looking at? The overwhelming majority say, yeah, don't be daft, of course I can. But actually, what we're perceiving is a tiny, tiny fraction, a laughable fraction of what actually exists in the, quote, space, more to know about that we appear to be standing within. So, beyond the limits, the decoding limits of the five senses, not least sight senses, lies infinity, infinite reality. All that is, has been, and ever can be, waiting to be experienced. But we can't see it, we're not aware of it in the conscious sense, because the body is only, and the senses are only decoding this narrow band of frequency we call the world. And so that really is a symbolic representation of the world that humans experience. And all these dogmatic, this is how it is, claims from academia and science and all the rest of them, is based on a myopia of awareness in terms of the greater picture. We are part, an expression of, a point of attention within infinite reality. And we have been manipulated to believe that we are just people, bodies, jobs, sexes, sexualities, nations, races, when they are just experiences, brief ones, that the true I, consciousness, is having. We are infinite awareness experiencing itself. All of us are expressions of this infinite awareness, this infinite state of consciousness that pervades, well, infinity. And all our experiences are the greater whole experiencing itself. And the more you can open your mind, your consciousness, to greater and greater swathes of this consciousness, the greater understanding, the greater picture, the greater awareness that people have of this tiny band of frequency we call the human world. That is why that which is behind human control has to squeeze human perception and human awareness. Otherwise, control is impossible. And all around the world in the different cultures, they have names for this state of infinite awareness. These are just a few of them. The Lakota in the United States talk about Wakantanka, which is the force which moves all things. You know, people say God is everywhere. And the five sense mind says, don't be a prat. God can't be everywhere. That's impossible. But if you are a consciousness that pervades everything, then you are everywhere. And this consciousness, which I symbolize here as this blackness, is that which pervades everything. The question is, are we influenced by it, or are we not influenced by it because we are mesmerized by the world of the five senses? And people might find it strange that I've symbolized this infinite awareness as blackness, because it's light. That's what is light, all that stuff. Well, you symbolize it how you like. I can only say that in a massively altered state of consciousness back in 2003, I saw it like this, and I'm not alone, as I'll come to. And this awareness, this infinite awareness, from which creation comes through aspects of the whole, like humans' creation, for instance, is what people through the ages have called God. But the name doesn't matter so much as the nature of what we're talking about. So I call it infinite awareness in awareness of itself. It's that level of this infinite consciousness that is aware that it is all consciousness. Infinite awareness in awareness of itself. Now, this is infinite awareness not in awareness of itself. It's still aspects of infinite awareness, but it is so mesmerized again by the five senses that it cannot perceive that this is what it is. It perceives instead, through the five sense decoding system, that it's Mary down the call center or Ronnie on the bus. And this has to happen for the few to control the many, and this is why it is fundamental to the whole conspiracy that the information I'm going to talk about in this first section is kept from us. Yeah, I said that I experienced this in a massively altered state, 2003. And what I experienced was a blackness that shimmered, a blackness that was incredibly brilliant. And so when I started reading the accounts of people like near-death experiences, where they leave the body, and therefore the body decoding system, the reality decoding system, thus they perceive a different reality, they were talking about this dazzling darkness, which is exactly what I experienced. And this is Ibn Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon, and he was buying, as his father did as scientist, the whole "this world is all there is" scenario. And then he had a near-death experience, which he wrote about in this book, Proof of Heaven. And his whole perception of reality and self was transformed. And what he said in the book, I nearly fell off my chair when I read it, given what I'd experienced years earlier. The core, or the dazzling darkness, from where the purest love emanated and where all was known. I'll come to the all was known in a second. But from where the purest love emanated and where all was known, if you are seeking to enslave the entirety of the human population, do you want them connected to that which is where the purest love emanates and where all is known? Or do you want them connected only to the five senses that are delivering a perception of reality that suits your desire to enslave them? This disconnection of five sense mind, what I call body mind, from expanded states of awareness is the very foundation, without which it couldn't happen, of this global conspiracy. I've also heard this state of awareness, in awareness of itself, described as the void, which is defined in the dictionary as a completely empty space. But this void is anything but empty. It's all that is, has been, and ever can be, waiting to manifest through expressions of itself. And again, the five-sense mind would say, that's ridiculous, mate. You can't be all that is, has been, past, and ever can be, future. That's impossible because the five-sense mind perceives only the linear relationship of time. What all that is, has been, and ever can be really is all possibility. All possibility waiting to manifest. All potential. And if you are all possibility and all potential, then you must be all possibility and all potential. Everything must be possible. Thus, the paradoxes start to disappear once you realize you're dealing with this all possibility. For instance, all possibility must be everywhere and nowhere. It must be both, otherwise it's not all possibility. It must be everything and nothing, or it's not all possibility. The no thing, void, that is actually everything, all possibility. And this is what this conspiracy desperately seeks to keep us separated from in terms of its influence. And so out of this all possibility come the worlds of what we call form. And each of them expresses itself with its own, quote, physics, with its own way of doing things. Because within all possibility, everything is possible, so all these different realms that are created through the creativity of consciousness obviously are going to manifest in incredibly different ways as they express the magnificence of all possibility. And these worlds are basically bands of frequency. There's more to it than that, but it will do for now. Sharing what we call the same space. So, in the old analog system, you had the radio and television stations sharing the same space, but they didn't interfere with each other unless they were close on the dial, because they were on different wavelengths, different frequencies, and therefore they passed through each other. And this is how reality works. We are in a band of frequency which is interpenetrated by all the other bands of frequency, but they are so different that they don't interfere with us unless they're very close to us on the frequency scale. And that will become relevant when I get into how humanity is actually manipulated from the hidden. So, we are living in a band of frequency which we perceive as everything when it's a tiny, laughable fraction of everything, and I mean laughable. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically this reality, is 0.005% of what exists in this universe. Some say it's a bit more, as high as 0.5%. Don't matter, it's tiny, ludicrously tiny. That's what we can see. Or, no, that is what our reality consists of. What we can see is ludicrously less. All we can see is this smear of the electromagnetic spectrum called visible light. That's it. Look around now, wherever you are, and you are seeing only what exists within that tiny, tiny band of frequency called visible light. So small, it's hysterical. And that is the human world of the seen. And this is a guy called Sergio Toporek, who's kind of putting this into context. Consider that you can see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum and hear less than 1% of the acoustic spectrum. 90% of the cells in your body carry their own microbial DNA and are not you. The atoms in your body are 99 point all those nines empty space. Nothing's empty space, but I get his point. And none of them are the ones you were born with. Human beings have 46 chromosomes, 2 less than a potato. The existence of the rainbow depends on the conical photoreceptors in your eyes. To animals without cones, the rainbow does not exist. Oh, this is all real, this is. So you don't just look at a rainbow, you create it. Explain how as we go along. This is pretty amazing, especially considering that all the beautiful colors you see represent less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's the world we call human. Human reality is an infinitesimal fraction of the infinite field of consciousness. And yet, we are told that all you need to know everything you need to know is within a book between 2 covers, within a smear of 0.005% of the universe. That's all you need to know. Read the book. Yeah, you got it all. We have dogmatic science, dogmatic academia. This is how it is. You say it's different, you're mad. And they're operating within a smear of 0.005% of what exists in the universe. Never mind beyond the universe, it's just one. We are part of infinite reality. Those that wish to enslave us, clearly, obviously, blatantly, don't want us to know that. And this is a near-death experiencer called Anita Moorjani, author of a book called Dying to Be Me. Like I say, they leave the body and experience a very different reality because the decoding systems of the body are no longer presenting reality to them as the senses present it. When we are not expressing in our physical body, you and I, all of us, we are expressions of the same consciousness. And that is a bottom line of what they don't want us to know. How can you divide and rule on the grounds of race and income bracket and all these other fault lines of division if those you are seeking to divide know that they are all ultimately each other? I am you, you are me. I am everything, and everything is me. And every one of us can say that, and it's true. They just don't want us to know that because of the implications of division and conflict. We are all one. To divide is to rule. And I'm not just talking about dividing between different human groups. I'm talking about dividing between 5 sense mind and expanded levels of consciousness. And now you can see on one level, in one aspect, how the world of the seen and the events of the seen are reflected by what I'm talking about in this first section. Because Black Lives Matter, funded to the tune of $90 million or more by billionaires who couldn't give a damn about black people. They've been abusing them and using them as slaves through the centuries. Now they care about them. No, they don't. They're funding Black Lives Matter. That's hijacked a phrase that, who could argue with that? Of course, Black Lives Matter. But when all lives matter becomes a racist term, you know that Black Lives Matter is a scam. And it's there to divide on the grounds of race. Because if you don't divide unity, you cannot control it. So as Alan Watts, the late and great thinker and expanded perceiver of reality, philosopher Alan Watts said, God is what no one admits to being and everyone is. Have you seen that in religion? You can't say you're God, that's blasphemous. Okay, but I am. And the reason that we don't experience consciously, most people anyway, this unity, this true nature of who we are, is because the five senses are decoding reality in a very different way. They see everything as apart from everything else, and they see form with empty space in between. So I'm standing here now, my five senses are telling me there's a camera there, there's a light there, there's a camera there, and there's a wall there. And between it is empty space. That's what the five senses do. That's why if you only operate in the five senses, you cannot connect dots. Because all you see is dots. As you expand your awareness beyond the five senses, you start to see how everything's connected and how at all levels things are connected. Thus you start seeing how the dots connect in what we call the conspiracy. And this perception of the five senses, if that's alone our arbiter of reality, it gives us the gift of gifts for the manipulators. It's a sense, a perception of separation. Separation from us and everything else. But there is no empty space. While we are perceiving through the five senses the world of form, in that so-called empty space is the field of consciousness, what I'll call the field, which we can connect with, and within it is what? All possibility, all potential, waiting to manifest, and our perceptions, as I'll come to, dictate what we manifest and what we don't, what we experience and what we don't. That's why if you think you're little me, you'll live a little me life, because that's what you will manifest as a possibility. So we see again the five senses are perceiving form. They perceive form in terms of the body. The body to the five senses ends with this. But in fact, the body is an expression, a holographic expression as it turns out, I'll come to that, of an energetic field of consciousness, an information field of which the body is a projection. And that energetic field is what's being exchanged in what we call hands healing and Reiki, etc. We are electromagnetic beings. And these energy techniques are about an exchange of that energy. You know, it's been shown in studies how the energy field of the recipient expands and empowers as this exchange takes place. And so we perceive the body, the five senses can only do that, but we are actually an energetic field of consciousness. And that energetic field interacts and interpenetrates other fields of other people. And this is where we get the process of, I feel so connected to you. In other words, there's a frequency compatibility connection. And on another occasion, people say, he was smiling and all that, but got bad vibes, bad vibes. So so often, people can manipulate you with the look on their face and what they do. But what they can't hide is the vibe they're giving off, because that's an expression of who they are. Thus, I got bad vibes from him, I got good vibes from her. And this field is the quantum field of potentialities and possibilities, and we're interacting with it. Question is, how much of it are we interacting with? And that's down to perception, as I'll come to. We're walking through the world, we're standing here, and this field is all around us. We are an expression of this field. And like I say, our perceptions dictate what we take from it and what we give to it. The field, I will call it, as we go along, of probability and possibility. And you could symbolize it very well as how the fish and sea life are connected by the ocean. There seems to be empty space between them, but actually it's an ocean that connects everything. This is exactly the same principle I'm talking about. And you can symbolize it too as not just one computer, loads of computers, all connecting into the internet. The internet, the Wi-Fi, if you like, becomes the connecting field of all these computers. And what does it do? It takes information in the Wi-Fi field and it puts it on the screen in a totally different form. And that's what we're doing to create this reality, as I'm going to explain. So the question then is, how much of this field of awareness are we accessing? How much of its insight, its wisdom, its knowing, its possibility and probability? The point being, again, if you wanted to control reality en masse of the population that you're targeting, do you want your population accessing great swathes of this potentiality? Or do you want them to be squeezed to as little of it as possible, so their perceptions of possibility are subsequently squeezed and you become much easier to control and manipulate? Because if we come into this world, and consciousness is of a frequency that couldn't hold that, because that is on a completely different wavelength to my consciousness, your consciousness, therefore I couldn't pick it up. If I'm going to interact with this world, I have to have an outer shell, an outer vehicle that's resonating within the frequency band of this reality, so I can pick that up and I can interact with it. So that's what the human body's there for, as a vehicle for consciousness, the eternal part of us, to experience this reality, very briefly. So if you come into this reality and you hold a connection to expanded states of awareness, you have everything you need. Your five senses are directly interacting you with the reality you want to experience, but you've also got mission control that's giving you the big picture and giving you a wider fix, a panoramic fix on what you're actually experiencing. The idea of the cult, as I'll come to, which is manipulating human society, and goes way back, is to isolate incarnate awareness into what I call body-mind, the five senses basically. Because then mission control is gone and you're trying to get a fix on a world from within the world you're experiencing. And if the information and the communication is controlled that you receive, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a true, realistic fix on where you are and what's going on. So the body is a biological computer decoding reality within this tiny band of frequency. And this is why when people are born and they come into this reality in a human vehicle, their prime overwhelming sense of reality is what they perceive as the physical world. Because the body is decoding that world into the illusion of physicality, And thus that becomes your whole foundation, absent expanded awareness, of what this world is. And the idea of the conspiracy is to focus your attention within body-decoded five-sense awareness and to disconnect you from expanded states, where you will get a fix on what's actually bloody going on instead of what CNN and the bloody BBC is telling you. This is the whole foundation of the conspiracy. Oh, I'm going to go into a lot of other stuff, names, dates, places, and all that stuff. This is the foundation. Holding human attention in the five senses. But beyond the five senses, we expand into potentially massive, infinite, energetic states of awareness. Expanded awareness and ultimately infinite awareness. You can symbolize it as a light, you can symbolize it as darkness, as I do, but dazzling darkness. But the theme is the same. Imagine you are trying to manipulate billions of people who have some kind of connection to this level of awareness. No chance. That's why they do what they do. So what is human? What do we call human? It's a focus of attention. That's all it is. When our consciousness leaves the body at what we call death, we're not human anymore. Human's just a brief experience through a body that decodes reality into a form, a means that we call human. As Alan Watts said, the ego, five-sense reality, five-sense mind, is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention. The foundation of the conspiracy is to control what that attention is focused upon. A focus of attention within infinite awareness in a way that keeps you from being influenced by all those other levels of yourself beyond the five senses. So this is, again, a real central pillar of human control. If you take a computer to be five-sense mind, five senses, body, mind, and the guy on the keyboard with the mouse has expanded awareness, well, when that's operating together, you've got all you need. You've got that which directly interacts with the internet, if you like, reality, five-sense reality, and you've got the bigger picture, the person who is able to see the greater panorama. You disconnect that, and mayhem follows. This is what happens when the computer gets what they call a virus, a computer virus. Suddenly, the guy's banging the mouse and he's banging the keyboard, nothing's happening. The computer, the operating system, has gone its own way, and it's not responding to this anymore. And that's exactly, and when I say a computer virus, you'll see how close to reality that is later on. What it means is the computer is going its own way and making its own decisions. That is the human plight. That's the foundation of the conspiracy. And if you look at it, I call it the bamboozle. Wherever you look in human society, it's all about mesmerizing, enticing, stimulating the five senses. Look at this, smell this, taste this, listen to this. And the human body can very accurately be symbolized as a virtual reality headset, because that's what it is. It's decoding reality in a particular way that gives you a particular experience. But you take the headset off, and you're not in that world anymore. you leave the body at what we call death. You're not in this world anymore. It's the same principle. And what the body headset is doing is taking waveform information, which is the foundation of this reality, waveform, vibration, and it's decoding it, first of all, through the five senses into electrical information, which it then communicates to the brain. And the brain then decodes that information into digital holographic information, and that digital holographic information is what we call this apparently physical world. It's the world of the five senses, which are taking that waveform information, turning it into electrical information, and sending it to the brain. Think of the ears. It's classic. Sound waves. That's what hits the ears, sound waves. Those sound waves, vibration, frequency, waveform, are then turned into electrical information. They are communicated to the brain, and only when the brain receives that message do we hear sound. So the brain has different parts which specialize in decoding from the different senses, and then it puts that information together into what we call reality, human reality, physical reality. So the world that we think is external to us is actually in here. It's deeper than that, but that'll do for now. It's in here. And where is the world of the computer? It's inside the computer. We just see inside the computer through the screen. And here's a quote from a mainstream science magazine, Wonderpedia magazine. Every second, 11 million sensations crackle along these brain pathways. The brain is confronted with an alarming array of images, sounds, and smells, which it rigorously filters down until it is left with a manageable list of around 40. Thus, 40 sensations, pieces of information, per second from 11 million make up what we perceive as reality. And if there's any gaps in the reality, the brain fills those gaps on the basis of what it thinks should be there. This is the reality that we're experiencing all the time. The physical world is a decoded illusion in the way I'm describing. So the external world is not external. It's in here. And so this is so accurate from the Matrix movie, the first one. When Neo asks, this isn't real? What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Exactly what it is. So, physicality and the apartness of everything is an illusion of the five sense decoding processes. You put on a headset, and it seems as if physical reality delivered by the headset in what? Information, which the brain decodes using the same senses, is outside of you, when actually it's obviously inside of you. So, this is the world, decoded from waveform information into the reality we experience. And like I say, it's the same with a computer. The computer is decoding Wi-Fi, okay, yeah, okay. So, where is it decoding it? Inside the computer. Where is the reality it's decoded into? Inside the computer. We just look at the screen and see what's inside the computer. Same principle. So we decode from the waveform through the digital to what is the holographic, illusory physical. And this explains a few things, like if you look at how psychics work, people like that, they are tuning in to the waveform level of reality. Numerologists who scan and read reality via numbers are reading the digital level of reality. But it's the same information in different forms. As part of my research once, I had a psychic reading with someone, and very soon afterwards with a numerologist, and they were virtually identical because they were reading the same information. And it doesn't matter how solid something appears to be, it's not really solid. The slower something vibrates, the more solidity it appears to have in the holographic world. And so we look at rocks, we look at trees and mountains and all these things. But all of them are conscious because they are an expression of infinite awareness. And they are all, in their base form, waveform information. And this is where we can interact with nature. But people talk about talking to plants. Well, you can't talk to plants, they don't understand English. Well, no, they don't have to. Because your energetic field, your waveform field, is communicating with their waveform field. That's where it's going on. So when you're walking through a forest, want to hug a tree or something, that's what we perceive as physical to physical, but the communication's going on at the waveform level. This is how you can glean information from rocks and standing stones through the waveform field of that stone and that rock. So there is no physical. That's the bottom line. And Albert Einstein said, concerning matter, we have all been wrong. Got it all wrong. What we have called matter is really energy whose vibration has been lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter, there is only light and sound. And that's the point. When it comes to be perceptible to the senses and the conscious mind, it exists. So we're told by the experts that atoms make up the solid world. Well, let's have a look at an atom. Atom, a nucleus with the electrons spinning around it. If the nucleus were the size of a peanut, the atom would be about the size of a baseball stadium. If we lost all the dead space inside our atoms, we would each be able to fit into a particle of dust, and the entire human race would fit into the volume of a sugar cube. Like I say, there is no empty space, but we're talking about the lack of physicality, the fantastic lack of physicality that we're being told creates physicality. The brain is dark, but sees light. How come? Because it decodes it. This is a scientist called Robert Lanza in a book called Biocentrism, explaining how the perception of a lighted candle is created. The flame is emitting photons, tiny packets of electromagnetic energy, each pulsing electrically and magnetically. These invisible electromagnetic waves strike a human retina, and if and only if the waves happen to measure between 400 and 700 nanometers in length from crest to crest, then their energy is just right to deliver a stimulus to the 8 million cone-shaped cells in the retina. Each in turn send an electrical pulse to a neighbor neuron, and up the line it goes at 250 miles an hour until it reaches the occipital lobe of the brain in the back of the head. On that, you saw that on that image of the brain earlier. There, a cascading complex of neurons fire from the incoming stimuli, and we subjectively perceive this experience as a yellow brightness occurring in a place we have been conditioned to call the external world. Does a falling tree make a noise? Only if you hear it. What? Only if you hear it. Otherwise it doesn't. When the foundation of a tree is an electromagnetic field with a holographic apparent physical form, but not. As the tree falls through the field of energy, consciousness, information, it creates a disturbance as one field passes through another field, creates a disturbance. That disturbance goes out, and if someone's there, they pick it up. They pick it up with the ears turn it into an electrical information, they pass it to the brain, and the brain decodes it into the sound of a tree falling. If there's nobody there to do that decoding, a falling tree makes no noise. This is the reality that we are experiencing. So words, I'm speaking now, yes, but it's not words that's passing between us. It's a vibrational field of information generated by my vocal cords. And your ears pick that up, turn it into electrical information, pass it to the brain decodes it, and you hear me speaking language. Everything is frequency. Even colors. What we see as a color is merely a frequency representing that color, which is reflected by the object in question. If that object absorbs that frequency, it's not that color. What it reflects is that color. Everything is frequency. Isaac Newton, he called the rainbow a spectrum, which is Latin for apparition or phantom. And that's what it is. It's all a phantom. Alan Watts described this very, very accurately. Without the brain, the world is devoid of light, heat, weight, solidity, motion, space, time, or any other imaginable feature. All these phenomena are interactions or transactions of vibrations with a certain arrangement of neurons. That's all that this world is, we call physical. And there's no time. You look at the perception of time, and it controls people's lives. Is that the time? What's the time? Oh, time flies. Oh, time's going so slow. There is no time. There is only the now. The now moment is all that exists. Oh, no, there's not. There's a past and there's a future. Okay. So where were you when you thought, or when you're thinking now about the past? Well, I'm in the now, yeah. Where are you when you're thinking about the future? Oh, well, I'm in the now. Where were you when you experienced what you perceive as the past? Well, I was in the now. Where will you be when you perceive or experience what you perceive as the future? Well, I'll be in the now. There is only the now. And yet worry and fear pull us into an illusory future and out of the now, the only moment we can change anything, where we need ultimate power in the now. And things like regret and resentment pull us into the past, or the perception of the past, which takes our energy and our power out of the now. And this is a near-death experiencer pulling all this together, who left the body and experienced reality beyond the decoding processes of the five senses. Everything from the beginning, my birth, my ancestors, my children, my wife, everything comes together simultaneously. I saw everything about me and about everyone who was around me. I saw everything they were thinking now, what they thought then, what was happening before, what was happening now. There is no time. There is no sequence of events. No such thing as limitation of distance, of period, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be simultaneously. That is consciousness freed from the decoding processes of the five senses, which limits perception, and thus limits behavior. Far away, that near-death experience there was talking about there's no such thing as distance or sequence and all that stuff. Far away, you look at the night sky. Oh, they're millions and billions of light years away. Are they? Are they really? Well, what you are actually perceiving as a, quote, physical experience is in your frickin' head. Where's the billions of bloody light years? And you look at these ever more advanced computer games. They're just information being passed to the brain via these headsets. And they've got space. They've got the illusion of time as one scene follows another. But all it is decoded information. And this is a great quote from a Central American shaman. You know, one of those primitive people that knows nothing. We are perceivers. We are awareness. We have no solidity. We are boundless. We, or rather our reason, forget this. And thus we entrap the totality of ourselves in a vicious circle from which we rarely emerge in our lifetime. And who sets up that vicious circle to keep us in a state of perceptual delusion? Those that are behind the global conspiracy and current events. So the world is not solid. It has to be solid. It has to be solid because I try to walk through a wall and it hurts. Okay. But what is that resistance? Okay, you can't walk through somebody else. Okay. Well, what's that resistance? It's not physical resistance, it's electromagnetic resistance. And if that electromagnetic frequency is far enough away, distant in that sense, from the other frequency, then they can pass through each other like radio stations on the analog system. This is why when people see what we call ghosts, I've seen it myself. They float through the bloody air and go through the wall. People say, don't be stupid, that's impossible. Well, it's not any more impossible than Radio 1 or Radio 2 going through the frickin' wall. They're different frequencies, therefore they don't interfere with each other. But we decode that electromagnetic resistance as physical resistance, because that's what the five senses do. What this world is holographic, illusory, physical. And, you know, holograms are being used now more and more and getting more and more sophisticated. And how it works, I'm sure most people have come across it, is you have a laser. Part of the laser goes direct onto a photographic film, a holographic film. And the other part of the laser takes a vibrational image, in effect, of whatever the subject is, and then that part of the laser is directed onto the photographic print where it collides with the other part of the laser to create a waveform pattern. A waveform pattern. Here we go. And then when you fire a laser, or what they call coherent light, at that pattern, amazing things happen. Apparently physical expressions of whatever has been photographed holographically appear. And as they get more and more sophisticated, the best of them look as solid as you and me. But you can put your hand through them. They're just holograms. And what this waveform does is it encodes the information of the object, the subject, and the laser picks out that information. And like I say, they can look as solid as you and me. This is, they're now doing this more and more. This lady is not on that stage. She's been projected from another city, holographically. Same with this guy, and all these here are holograms, apart from him on the top left. This lady here looks incredibly solid, and yet she's a hologram, next to a bloke that isn't. spot the difference. You've got Celine Dion doing a duet with a holographic Elvis. What we're getting now in this advancing technological world is a technological, increasingly mirror of reality that we're actually experiencing. So, we're taking waveform information and we're turning it into a holographic world we experience as physical in here. And the observer decodes reality. It is the act of observation that triggers that decoding process. And don't take my word for it, even mainstream science is well acquainted with the fact that this is the case. This is a mainstream report. Your entire life is an illusion. New test backs up theory that the world doesn't exist until we look at it. True. The act of looking, decoding, manifests this world as we experience it. When we're not decoding, same principle as the falling tree, if there's nobody there, then this reality is in a waveform state. But when you look at it, you decode it by design, and it becomes physical. You look away, it's waveform again. But it's like, when we have these, we used to, do we still have them? I don't know. We'll see at Christmas. Pantomimes in Britain. And there's this gag that's used every time where someone stands behind somebody and the audience, the kids are shouting, "He's behind you," and he turns around. And the guy goes around with him. So he's saying, no, there's nobody there. He's behind you. And it's the same basic principle. When we're not observing something into holographic, apparently physical reality, then it's simply waveform reality. And this says the universe doesn't exist if we stop looking at it. This is according to a famous theory in quantum mechanics, which argues that a particle's past behavior changes based on what we see. Now scientists are performing a new experiment proving the theory to be true on the scale of atoms. And it's called in science the observer effect. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's much more accurate to call it the decoding effect, because the act of looking, the act of focus, triggers the decoding processes which turn waveform into the world of the illusory physical. So form, what we call form, is in formation in a waveform state, and we decode it into a holographic physical state. We are making that happen in here. And that's true too, even of the body. The body is a waveform information field. And the decoding processes are triggered when we observe our own body. And I've been saying this for a long time, that the world's holographic and the universe is holographic on the physical level. And you're seeing more and more mainstream science looking at the fact that, it kind of explains everything if that's true. You are a hologram projected from the edge of the universe. Well, not necessarily projected from the edge of the universe, but you're a hologram. Are you a hologram? Quantum physics says the entire universe might be. It is. And this is a group of Japanese scientists who have come to the same conclusion. Now Japanese researchers presented evidence to suggest that the universe is in fact nothing but a projection. Well, it's a projection out of the waveform into the holographic. And this explains so much too. Holograms have a very, very unique characteristic. Every part of a hologram is a smaller version of the whole. And therefore, if you take a holographic print and you cut it into 2 or 4, and you fire the laser at these fragments, you won't get a half of that picture, you won't get a quarter of that picture, you'll get a half or quarter-sized version of the whole picture. Every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole. So the whole hologram is made up of little holograms that are exactly the same. And that's why in reflexology and in acupuncture, etc., they can identify different parts of the body, different parts of the ear, different parts of the hands and the feet that represent different organs and parts of the body. That has to be the case because the body is a hologram. Therefore, every part of the body is a smaller version of the whole hologram and contains the same information. On a smaller scale, yes, but the same information. And it's the same with palm reading. If you get a good one, the hand contains the information of the whole body. And if you've got a skilled palm reader, they can read what's going on the basis of what's going on in the hand, because that's a representation of the whole hologram and the information in it. As above, so below. That's holographic principle. The smaller version is the same as the bigger version, just a smaller version of it. So you have the brain cell in the universe, showing similar characteristics. And we have as above, so below, where the human energetic field kind of mirrors that of the Earth's energetic field. Because everything's holographic, everything's a smaller version of the whole. So what is human? What is human is how the body decodes information. That's what human is. It's not who we are, it's what we're experiencing. What is any species? It is how the body, computer, sensing, decoding systems decode reality. Why does an elephant act like an elephant just by being an elephant? Why doesn't it act like a duck? Why does a duck act like a duck? Because the decoding systems of these biological computers are encoded to decode reality in that way. So when consciousness enters the body of an elephant, it acts like an elephant. And like I say, these headsets and these virtual reality technologies now with the gloves for the touch senses and the audio are hacking in to the same senses through which we decode this reality. And everyone will know that although that's just information being fed to the eye senses, the ear senses, and the touch senses, just information from technology, bang, it can be incredibly real. This world seems incredibly real. And as the technology gets more and more sophisticated, and you see how closer and closer it's getting to the reality we call real, and those at the cutting edge of this are saying it won't be that long before you want me to know the difference. Human life is like watching an interactive virtual reality movie, interacting through this field with the equivalent of Wi-Fi. And that's appropriate because we really do live in a simulation. Won't be able to go into this in too much detail today because there are other things to do. But I've been saying since just after the turn of the millennium that this reality is actually a simulation. It is a vastly, vastly advanced version of a virtual reality game. And that's why the similarities between virtual reality games and this reality are so fundamentally the same. So the physics of computer games mirror those of this reality. This is Max Tegmark, a physicist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, who was the author of a book called Our Mathematical Universe. And he said the universe can be entirely described by numbers and maths, this is the digital level, just as a video game is encoded. The physics of computer games and our world are basically the same. And that's what's happening. That's why the similarities are so obvious now. It's because this is also a version, very advanced, of the same thing. And I said around 2003, and I've written it in books, that we live in a simulation, and the limits of that simulation, certainly in the, if you like, the world that we can be aware of, is the speed of light. The speed of light is not the fastest speed possible. That's ludicrous. How can you have a fastest speed within all possibility? Don't be daft. But the speed of light is the limit of the matrix, the simulation. That's what I was saying in 2003. And in May this year, Scientific American came out with a significant report which said that the evidence points to the fact we live in a simulation and the limits of it are the speed of light. I left school at 15 to go and play football. The person who wrote this article had, letters after the name and all that stuff. How could I know without this education? Because if you tap in to the field beyond the five senses, you can know things that the five sense world doesn't know. And anyone can do it. So we had this headline, Future Shock. We owe David Icke and Elon Musk an apology if quantum experiment proves we are living in the matrix. Whisper it. Ooh, whisper it. But many respected scientists and academics are becoming increasingly convinced by left field provocateur David Icke's assessment that our reality is an artificial simulation. Well, first of all, I said it long before Elon Musk. And secondly, Elon Musk is part of what I'm going to expose in part 2, and thus he will know that we live in a simulation. So the computer is taking information from the Wi-Fi field and putting it on the screen. The human body is doing the same to create our reality. And if you look at what this matrix, the simulation is, it's an information source. It's not a construct, it's an information source. If you look at the Matrix movie, for instance, the connection to the matrix went into actually the reptilian brain area at the back of the head, and through that information connection, they enter the matrix through the brain. And it's the same with this simulation. We are decoding the simulation into the reality we think is real. And that's why when you leave the simulation, by leaving the body which connects you to the simulation, you experience a very different reality. So this Matrix series of movies was very, very symbolically, and more than symbolically, often accurate in terms of the reality we're experiencing. And I go into this simulation stuff at length in Children of the Matrix and Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told. So people go around saying, I live in the real world, when the real world is the last thing they live in. It's not a real world. It's a world of decoded illusion. And you'll appreciate by now why those that are manipulating us and seeking to enslave us sure as hell don't want us to know any of this stuff. Because this is the information that can set us free, not least by really deep in the rabbit hole understanding how we're being manipulated. Because it's much deeper than what appears on the surface, deep as that is. So you mean it's not real? No, not real in terms of physicality. Edgar Allan Poe, all that we see or seem is just a dream within a dream. This is not the I. These physical bodies and these apparent personalities are not the real I. They are what the real I, consciousness, is experiencing. And the foundation of the conspiracy, again, is to persuade people that what they are experiencing is who and what they are. So you say to someone, hello, nice to meet you, how are you? They'll give you their name, they'll give you their location probably, maybe their birthplace, they'll give you their maybe income bracket, job, sexuality, race, or religion. They won't say, nice to meet you, I'm all that is, has been, and ever can be. Oh, I thought I recognized you, so am I. That doesn't go on. It's all based on the labels of a human life that develops the perception of who we are. When all the time we are awareness, a state of being aware. That's what we are ultimately, a state of being aware. But how aware while we're in the five sense world? That's the question. And from the conspiratorial point of view, the answer to that is as little awareness as we can create. So they don't want us connecting out into the field of possibility and probability, insight, wisdom, knowledge. They want us shut away in the five senses because we're part of an ocean of infinite consciousness. And you can look at an ocean and you can see the crest of the wave, the white crest of the wave, and it looks different from the ocean. And symbolically, we in human form are like those crests of the wave. We are part of the ocean, but we have a different expression to the rest of the ocean consciousness. And when you look at a droplet of water and the ocean, you can take a droplet of water out of the ocean and you can hold it in your hand, and it looks individual. It looks in and of itself. That's what we perceive as human when we're disconnected from the ocean. But drop the droplet back in the ocean, and where does the droplet end and the ocean start? There is no division, they're all one. And that's the level the conspirators don't want us to see and understand. They want to disconnect the droplet from the ocean, disconnect five sense mind from infinite awareness. And when you connect with infinite awareness and you see what you couldn't see before, they call you mad and crazy and a lunatic. Leonard Cohen said, if you don't become the ocean, you'll be seasick all your life. A definition of the human plight, if ever there was one. And because of this lack of awareness in so many people of the nature of who we are, infinite, eternal, ever-exploring, experiencing awareness, there is this fear of death, which is an expression, the extreme expression of the fear of the unknown. The more you can keep from people, the more known you can keep from people, the more unknown there is to fear. And death being top of the list, when actually there is no death. But fear of death gives power to those you perceive can help you avoid death for as long as possible. It gives power to doctors who don't know their arse from their elbow when it comes to how reality works and what the body is. But hey, let's give our power away, COVID era, I rest my case, to doctors. Just keep me alive a bit longer, doctor. As if you bloody know how in terms of the way the body really works. Fear of death comes from the ignorance of life. And the idea of the conspirators is to keep us in ignorance of what life is. Rumi, a 13th century Persian poet and deeply aware, said, "This place is a dream. Only a sleeper considers it real. Then death comes like dawn and you wake up laughing at what you thought was your grief." Fear of death is actually fear of life. And it's like this near-death experiencer said, it's like being half asleep when I was alive in a body and totally awake when I was pronounced dead, because she was free of the decoding processes of the body. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is death. It's taking off the frickin' headset. Oh, my headset don't work anymore. Oh, I've died. That's it. There is nothing to fear. But the more they can get us to fear in any form, the more we're open to control. So what our consciousness is doing when it leaves the body at what we call death, what's leaving the body, what we call near-death experience, is it's leaving the decoding processes of the body and therefore is no longer subjected to them, therefore experiences a totally different reality. As another near-death experiencer said, a realm of clarity where I understood everything. I felt connected to everybody because the five senses decode apartness with space in between, when the reality is unity. And one near-death experiencer described it brilliantly. They talked about this world that we're experiencing here, the human world, as like the beam of a torch. You're in a massive warehouse, but all you're aware of is what is in the beam of the torch, because you can't see anything else. You're not aware of anything else. And then you die, she said, and suddenly you realize what you've been part of all along, but could only see a fragment of in the symbolic beam of the torchlight. The focus of attention in the body. And so life is but a series of frequencies within our reality anyway. And when people leave the body, they don't cease to be. They simply go on experiencing, living eternally, but in another frequency that the physical body cannot decode. Thus, they appear to be gone and no longer with us, when actually they could be all around us, but just on another frequency. And all that psychics are doing, and mediums, is opening their consciousness, the good ones, I mean, there's a lot that are not, opening their consciousness to other frequencies beyond this realm and tuning in to these departed, passed on, gone forth expressions of consciousness that were once in a human body. As Nikola Tesla, the great real scientist, said, if you wish to understand the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration, and then you'll get it. So, if we don't understand reality, we don't understand anything. Now, that is quite a statement when you think of this. All over the world, the parliaments of the world, the political offices are making decisions and making laws on the basis of a world that does not exist. That's the reality. They're basing these decisions on the world being physical and limited and all these things. And then you go to the financial system, to business, to science, much of it what we call science, not worth bloody following, and medicine. And they're all founded, based in what they do and what they believe, apart from the cutting-edge scientists, real scientists, on a world that does not exist. It's freaking insanity. No wonder the world is mad. And the media is reporting a world that does not exist in the form that we're experiencing it. Why? I'm going to get into this much more in the second section. But this world is controlled by what I call the global cult. It's a network of secret societies, semi-secret groups, and the institutions and corporations and governments of the world of the scene. And it is pushing the world towards total human global control. The COVID era is merely the latest and massive expansion of that I've been uncovering for 30 years, 31 years now. And this is the cult that seeks to keep us from understanding reality, understanding who we are, understanding the illusory nature of what we're experiencing, so they can go on using the knowledge they have to enslave us because of the knowledge we don't have. And this is how it works. There's two worlds. There's the world of the population, and there's the world of the cult. And the difference between them is knowledge. The reason the cult is made up of secret societies is to keep secrets. What secrets? One, where the world's being taken, and two, the nature of reality which allows them to take us there. And why is that so important for them to keep that knowledge? Because they don't want the target population to know it, which makes them easier to control. And I'll get more into this, like I say, in the second section, but they systematically hoard knowledge and keep it from the population, not least about the nature of reality, which is why what I'm talking about in this first part of the live stream today is fundamental to taking away the power that this cult has over humanity and over the human mind on the basis of keeping us in ignorance. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, if we can really understand the problem, the answer will come out of it, because the answer is not separate from the problem. Well, let's look at the answer first. The answer, how we should be, is connected while we are in embodiment to expanded levels of consciousness, so that we have the interaction through the five senses with the reality we're experiencing, but we have the panorama, big picture guidance from expanded levels of consciousness that gives us a much greater fix on what we're experiencing. That is the answer. This is why they don't want the answer. The foundation of human control is to disconnect human five-sense awareness from expanded levels of consciousness. That is the foundation of it. And it's being done in multiple forms, and where they want to go with this, and I'll get into this later, is to connect the human brain to artificial intelligence to artificially keep us here by controlling our perceptions externally. And this is where we're meant to be. And the revolution is not a revolution of violence, it's not a revolution of fighting, it's a revolution of perception, where we break out of these prison cells, these bubbles of controlled perception. Gotcha. Once we are in that five-sense perception alone, gotcha. Outside of it, all that wisdom, insight, knowing, and perspective, waiting to be connected to. The last thing they want, and these jabs are part of that. I'm going to get into that in this section too as well. All that is what they don't want us to connect with. So we are manipulated, I say, well, many people are, into these bubbles of perception, which hold us in a limited state of who we are, our own potential, our own possibility, and also of understanding what's happening in the world and why. So the process is isolate them in the bubble perception of the five senses, and then by control of information, program those isolated five senses with the sense of perception and reality that you want them to have to make it most easy for you to control billions. And this is how all that is, has been, and ever can be, aspects of all that is, has been, and ever can be, perceive themselves as Ethel on the checkout and Bill driving the bus. This is how it's done. Ethel is a unique expression of all that is, has been, and ever can be. So is Bill. But they won't perceive themselves like that, because that's not how they've been programmed to self-perceive. Hide this and sell them that. That's how it's done. We are imprisoned as a humanity by our own programmed perception. Imprisoned by our point of attention, our sense of reality, which is constantly indoctrinated into us. And to do it, they give us a fake reality of everything. And I'm talking virtually everything that we've been told is actually not true. People are starting to understand that in the COVID era, more and more. But it's always been true. And why this is important, this whole thing about perception, is that perceptions are frequencies. And the importance of that will become clear. Every time we have a thought or an emotion, depending on the nature of that thought, the nature of that emotion, we are generating frequencies. Do you know what they've got now is technology, because they've worked out the frequencies that different emotions and thoughts operate on. They've got technology that can fire frequencies representing certain emotional and mental states across a community, and the brain starts decoding those frequencies, and those people start to then have those emotions and have those thought patterns. But going the other way, every time we think and feel emotion, we're sending out frequencies based on that emotion and that frequency. So love is a very high frequency. Joy, very high frequency. I feel so light today. Depression, fear, anxiety are very low, slow frequencies. Oh, I feel so heavy today because of the impact of the frequencies on our field. Words are frequencies. What we say, how we say it, dictates the frequency. And these emotions, these thought patterns, become our perceptions. So our perceptions are a band of frequency that represent our psychological and emotional state of being, and that frequency band is interacting with the field of potentialities and possibilities. And therefore, our perceptions are dictating what part of possibility and probability that we are manifesting as an experience. And this cult knows that, which is why it is seeking to control our perception, because it knows that will lead to our experience. You control perception, you control experience. This is very true. Accidents happen. That's what everyone says. But in a quantum universe, there are no such things as accidents, only possibilities and probabilities folded into existence by perception, in exactly the way that I've just described. Werner Heisenberg, Nobel Prize winning physicist, atoms or elementary particles themselves are not real. They form a world of potentialities or possibilities rather than one of things or facts. And it is perception that dictates what those possibilities are that are made manifest in our lives. Einstein said, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you can't help but get that reality. Exactly. And this cult knows that. So if it can dictate our frequency by dictating our perceptions, it dictates our reality and our experience. So if you are in a perceptual state of self-identity, that you are little me and have no power, what power do I have? I just have to do as I'm told. then that limitation of perception, that limitation of self-identity manifests itself as a limitation of the frequency band that we're putting out. Thus, we are interacting with the field of possibility and probability within that band. What does that mean? It means that our sense of limitation becomes our experience limitation. It becomes what appears to be a self-fulfilling prophecy when what it is perception becoming experience. And that experience will not change until you change your perception and change the nature of the interaction with the field of possibility and probability. As Buddha is supposed to have said, the mind that perceives the limitation is the limitation. This is why. Sense of limitation manifests out of possibility and probability, experience of limitation. But if you self-identify with being all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief human experience, then you're not thinking and perceiving and self-identifying in terms of limitation, quite the opposite. And thus the band of frequency representing your perceptions is both massively expanded and massively higher in frequency. So you interact with a much greater swathe of the field of possibility and probability, and as a result, your life is completely different to someone who thinks they're little me. You suddenly realize that amazing coincidences happen in your life that weren't happening before when you were in little me mode, because you are interacting with possibility and probability in a much more expanded way, and thus your experience reflects that. So this is the foundation of human control again. To keep human perception of self and the world in a narrow band of frequency by the constant bombardment of programmed information. My God, the COVID era. There's no better example. Because they know, this cult, because of this hoarding of information through secret societies and keeping it from the population, that if they can hijack perception, they will dictate the frequency of that perception, and they will therefore hijack experience. And you'll be no problem to them, because I've got no power, what can I do? Putting people in a little box is the whole point of the exercise. And the cult, I'll talk about some of its history after we've had a break, but the cult has set up human society to do exactly that, to hijack perception and thus dictate experience. So you come into this world and immediately the programming starts. It can come through your parents initially, and if they've been through the process you're about to go through and bought it, well, they're going to pass that on to you, not through malevolence, but because they believe it's the best thing, because that's what they've been told. And you're going to start getting programmed into their way of perception. Through parents. Like I say, not through, well, sometimes malevolence, but mostly not malevolence at all. And then you've only just come into the world. You've been here maybe 3-4 years. And suddenly you're sitting at a desk and an authority figure is telling you when you have to be there, when you can leave, when you can talk, when you can eat, when you can go to the toilet. They're telling you what to believe, what not to believe. They're testing you on what to believe and what not to believe. And if you don't believe what they tell you to believe, then you get bad grades from their point of view. Thank God I left school at 15. Thank you, God. And the programming starts. The programming of obeying authority, when you realize the consequences of not obeying authority and doing what you're told, and the process of perceptual control, and the download starts. And the public education system is massively vital to the suppression of knowledge which they have. And I call it the postage stamp consensus. And it's worse now than ever. I mean, I went to school in the 50s and 60s, 1950s, 1960s. And Of course, there was programming then, of course there was. It wasn't even in the same universe as the scale of child and young person programming now. It's unbelievable now. So you have this postage stamp consensus, as I call it. And what I mean by that is you are taught a tiny band of information, possibility, how things are, and anyone that steps off the postage stamp is a disruptive influence in the classroom, or dangerous, or mad, or all this stuff. And it's a narrow band of overwhelmingly inaccurate, ridiculously limited information of possibility. And what they're doing with this postage stamp is they're taking potential expanded awareness and they're doing that to it. They are overlaying it, suppressing it by a version of reality that suits the cult's agenda of mass human control through ignorance and much else. And through your life, you have to stay, or you don't have to, you're pressured to, stay on the postage stamp. If you go off it, I sprinted off it a long time ago and I'm still frickin' running, you're mad or you're bad. And the woke mentality, which is an extreme expression of the postage stamp, is now insisting that everyone else is an extreme expression of the postage stamp. I won't, if you don't mind. Keep going. Cradle to grave on the postage stamp. Control perception and you control reality. And it starts in the schools, never more so than now. What school teaches children? Truth comes from authority. Intelligence is the ability to remember and repeat. Accurate memory and repetition are rewarded. Non-compliance is punished. Conform intellectually and socially. And like I say, and I can't say it enough times, never was that more true than now. Lesson for life. The system knows best and is always right. I will follow the rules. I will follow the rules. This is the other part of it. Briefly mentioned it. It's teaching kids from the earliest age to obey authority without question because of the carrot and the stick. Fear is infused into kids from the youngest age. Fear of authority. Programming prisons for your kids. That's what schools are. And no one's more programmed these days than the frickin' teachers. And what they're doing, you used to hear this all the time in Britain. We must prepare children for the workplace. So, you're not preparing children for an expanded life of awareness and adventure and expressing their uniqueness. No. You are preparing them to be a cog in your frickin' machine. That's what education is. Creating cogs, taking alive, wondrous, questioning, joyful kids and turning them into clones of a frickin' system to suit your control. This is J.D. Rockefeller. Don't start me. The oil tycoon, responsible for creating the General Education Board in America in 1903. I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers, a nation of slaves. The same Rockefeller family that created allopathic medicine, scalpel and drug, and created the World Health Organization, which has driven the COVID hoax. Nice family. Sometimes the most brilliant and intelligent minds do not shine in standardized tests because they do not have standardized minds. The whole point of the education system is to turn out standardized minds and to lock people away in the left side of the brain. The logical, sequential, rational in its terms, analytical, objective, looks at parts, there you go. What's the left side of the brain? 5 senses. Looks at parts, sees only parts. And to suppress the right side of the brain, which sees the random, intuitive, holistic, synthesizing, subjective, and looks at wholes, looks at patterns, looks at how everything's connected. Don't want people there. Don't want the kids there. They might suss it. And what we're supposed to do is be whole brain people, where both serve the other. But what this system has done has created soldiers at the gate in different forms. Doctors, politicians, media, etc. as guards on the gate to stop a right brain influence on the left brain perception. And as this guy Eric Burns said, the moment a little boy is concerned with which is a jay and which is a sparrow, left brain, he can no longer see the birds or hear them sing. Right brain. And this is a study for the College of William and Mary in Virginia involving school-aged children between kindergarten and 12th grade. This is what they found. A massive decline in creativity as children have become less emotionally expressive, less energetic, less talkative and verbally expressive, less humorous, less imaginative. All these are right brain. Less unconventional, less lively and passionate, less perceptive, less apt to connect seemingly irrelevant things, dots, less synthesizing and less likely to see things from a different angle. That's what the education system is. And people then go out from the education system into the world of the scene, of the adult world, and they meet people there who have been through the system they've just come out of earlier. And so, because they've all bought the programming, they're all confirming to each other that actually what they believe to be real, because they've been programmed to believe it, is actually real. And so, I'm a politician. Tell me what we should do. Or let me tell you what you should do. I'm an academic. Let me tell you what to believe. I'm a scientist. Let me tell you what reality is. I'm a journalist. Let me tell you what's going on. And all of them haven't got a freaking clue. They only know what they've been programmed to think they know. No wonder the world's a bloody mess. Yes, I can see it now. The bubble program. That's what it does. And it's also the arrogance bubble. Anyone outside the bubble, anyone off the postage stamp who says, hey, there's another way of looking at this, that's ridiculous, you're mad. My God, I keep coming back to the COVID era, where everything is kind of expanded and made more extreme. All these concepts I'm talking about. Programming stage 3, peer pressure. Fear again, fear of what other people think, couldn't give a shit. Peer pressure, the sheep and the sheepdog. You know, sheep need a sheepdog and a shepherd to keep them in line. Human sheep don't need a sheepdog. They don't need a shepherd. They keep each other in line. What is the sheepdog? Just represents fear, keep them in line. The shepherd, authority. But what if the flock of sheep didn't bow to fear, didn't do what authority told it, the shepherd, and just went their own way? They'd be uncontrollable. The shepherd would be standing there with his stick and the dog looking on, absolutely unable to do anything about it. But instead, they just conform to fear and authority. Programming stage 4, mainstream media, constantly bombarding us with the same perception of reality that we got through school and university and elsewhere. Good evening. Lies, half-truths, official line, complete bollocks. Good night. All the channels of the world, 24/7, are doing that. How can the media let you lie to you? Because it knows you simply won't check the facts, or vast majority won't. They just believe it. So all this together is creating this control of perception, which creates control of human behavior and control by the system, controlling perception. And then they want to keep you on that postage stamp line through the rest of your life. So they're going to dictate what success is. They're off. You're after whatever you're seeking, whatever you're told you should seek to be successful. Quick, keep running, keep running, keep running. Oh, here we go. You must succeed. Apparently we must succeed. Well, what's success? Well, they tell us what success is because they even tell us what our dreams should be and our version of success should be. It should be more money, bigger house, more flash car, or perceiving and pursuing what? Physical, material things to keep their perceptions in a physical, material perception of reality. Oh, I'll get there in the end. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Don't look either way, don't look either way. No, no, keep walking. You'll get that carrot eventually. And then some people think they win in this pursuit of success dictated by the system to keep you in line. But when they get older, they start to realize something. Many do. They've been hoaxed. What was it really all about? I was kind of born, and then I went to school, and I went through all those years of going to school every day, being told what to think, and then I had to get this job to pay the rent, and then oh, well, what was it all about? I thought I was getting somewhere, but it never got anywhere, did it? No, because it wasn't meant to. It was meant to confuse and deceive you to serve the system all your life, and maybe just realize that right at the end. And Alan Watts brilliantly describes what I'm talking about here in this short video.
In music, one doesn't make the end of a composition the point of the composition. If that were so, the best conductors would be those who played fastest. And there would be composers who wrote only finales. People go to concerts just to hear one crashing chord, because that's the end. But we don't see that as something brought by our education into our everyday conduct. We've got a system of schooling which gives a completely different impression. It's all graded. And what we do is we put the child into the corridor of this grade system with a kind of, come on, kitty, kitty, kitty. And yeah, you're going to kindergarten, you know. And that's a great thing because when you finish that, you'll get into first grade. And then, come on, first grade leads to second grade and so on. And then you get out of grade school, you've got high school, and it's revving up. The thing is coming. Then you're going to go to college. And by Jove, then you get into graduate school. And when you're through with graduate school, you go out to join the world. And then you get into some racket where you're selling insurance. And they've got that quota to make. And you're going to make that. And all the time, this thing is coming. It's coming. It's coming. That great thing, the success you're working for. Then when you wake up one day about 40 years old, you say, my God, I've arrived. I'm there. And you don't feel very different from what you always felt. And there's a slight letdown because you feel there's a hoax. And there was a hoax. A dreadful hoax. They made you miss everything. We thought of life by analogy with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end, and the thing was to get to that end, success or whatever it is, or maybe heaven after you're dead. But we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played.
It's a musical thing, and you're supposed to sing and dance. What's that? It's a musical thing. You're supposed to sing and dance. It's a high-frequency thing. The cult doesn't want that. It wants you to pass through life, as John Lennon said. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And taking control of our perception back is the foundation of where from here. Breaking out of the postage stamp consensus and living our infinite potential instead of someone's version of what it should be. And of course, never more than in the COVID era have we been bombarded with rules and regulations and oppression of expression of uniqueness. All not a coincidence. And so the stress of life. The stress of life. We are all that is, has been, and ever can be. Having a brief human experience. What is there to be stressed about? What we are manipulated to be stressed about. So how did this become this? Because of this. And especially, and I'm going to go into this at the start of the next section, especially because of this. What the Native Americans call wetiko, which is a state of consciousness that this cult is driven by, controlled by, and wishes us to be connected to, so that we become expressions of it. But I'll get more into that at the start of the next section. But I'll just finish this one by saying this. If we don't understand reality, we don't understand anything. Now, I'll give you an example of that. And how, without understanding reality, things are brushed away. Oh, that's not possible, you're mad. This. Of course, I've been the butt of many jokes and ridicule galore by saying that behind this cult, like I say, I'll get more into this after we've had a break, is a non-human force dominated by reptilian, but not only reptilian, what we call the greys, these classic grey aliens are also part of it, and others. But the dominant one is the reptilian. And people say, well, why can't we see them? You're mad. You know, where are they? Well, the answer is, you can't see almost any bloody thing. Because you're decoding the tiniest band of frequency called visible light that is ludicrously narrow, I don't think by accident at all. And therefore you can't see anything. And these non-human group operates right on the periphery, but outside of what we can see and perceive. Can come in, but not for long because there's an atmospheric and frequency problem, but it's just on that periphery. So, you people say, I saw this UFO and it kind of appeared out of nowhere and then disappeared into nowhere. Or this entity just appeared at the end of my bed and then just disappeared into nowhere. What does the five senses say? That's insane. What are you talking about? Possible. No, it's not. When something enters the frequency band of the five senses, the visual senses, it appears to have come out of nowhere. It hasn't come out of nowhere. It's come from a frequency you can't see and perceive and decode into one that you can, and suddenly there it is, out of nowhere. And when it leaves, it does the opposite. It seems to disappear into nowhere. It doesn't. It leaves the frequency that you can decode. As this near-death experiencer said, there's so much more that exists simultaneously and alongside the things that you can see. You know that just because you cannot see them, you can't experience it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But that's what the cult wants us to do, to believe that. So it can do all this stuff, and we just dismiss that it's possible. And then there's another thing about reality and this old reptilian stuff. I started coming across in the 1990s, all around the world, people who said they'd seen apparently a human change from a human into a reptilian form and back again. And again, you know, I'm not a kamikaze pilot. I put that on the back burner and I was thinking, oh, okay, it's interesting. We'll see what happens. And then more and more and more, and eventually you cross a line where you think, I've got to talk about this. There's so many saying the same thing in different parts of the world. And so, again, the five senses, keep coming back to this because this is the arbiter of reality. Therefore, it's the arbiter of the possible. So, you can't go from a solid body to a solid body, right? Right. You can't. And when you've stopped laughing, I'll explain to you why that's not what's happening with shape-shifting. Because there is no bloody physical. So how can you go from a physical to a physical? Shape-shifting is possible because the body is not solid. It's a waveform information field. And these hybrid bloodlines that I've been exposing for 30 years, or most best part of 30 years, have dual information fields. One is the human field, and one is a non-human field. And the human field, for obvious reasons, is the one projected at the world. So, through this decoding system I've been talking about, as I look at someone, a hybrid who's projecting the human field, I'm seeing a human. But there are times it happens in rituals, and it happens rarely, but occasionally, and a lot of people have seen it. The reptilian field becomes the dominant one within the hybrid field. And from the observer's decoding perspective, as that not physical solid shift, energetic field shift happens to the observer decoding that into holographic reality, it appears that that person has physically changed from a human to a reptilian. I've not used the Queen by accident there, by the way, as you probably know. So when you have this phenomenon of possession, and I've seen this happen, what's happening is you've got the holographic field of the person being possessed. Okay, it's a human. It's got a human face. It's a human form. As this entity starts to infuse its information field into the human field in what we call possession, that information starts to impose itself upon the human field, and to an observer, that information is now being decoded in a way that makes it appear, and that's the way the decoding system works, that this person is shifting from a human to a distorted non-human face. You know, it's like the Exorcist movie, and you know, you get these extremes of possession where the face changes. You know, I've bloody seen it. And so the more that the possessing entity infuses its information into the possessed field, the more the possessed field changes to reflect the entity and its information field. And to the observer, there's a possession going on in which the person's shifting and changing. It's exactly the same principle as shape-shifting. So it's the observer that sees the shift and perceives it to be physical, when it's actually an information field shift. So there you go. It's just a trick of the light, don't worry. The point being that this world is nothing like we're told it is, and how we experience that it is. And where from here? Well, in part 2, deep in the rabbit hole. From this foundation perspective, a look at the world that we're living through today and what the COVID era is really all about. I'll be back in 1 hour. See you then. Bye.